بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله تعالى سيدنا محمد أشرف المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه اليوم الدين تعلم والتعليم وتذكر تذكرون في الانتفاع والإفادة الإسفادة والحث لا تمس بكتابنا سنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى وسلم والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلال الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته قربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله كله لا قوة إلا بالله العظيم عدد ربك تبكتب أبد الأبدين وأبد الهداهين سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وحسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل لا قوة إلا بالله العظيم اللهم إني أعوذ بك من أن أضل أو ضلال أو أجهل أو يجهل علي اللهم أغننا بالعلم وزينا بالحلم وأكرمنا بالتقوى وجملنا بالعافية يا الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين. طيب, so we are picking up where we left off in the book The Ladder to Success and True Living Allah Ta'ala, and we are on page 19. And we mentioned last time some of the things that every single person on the face of the earth who is of sound mind and has reached adulthood, has reached puberty, what they have to believe in. That there is a creator, Allah Ta'ala, that He is one, and that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sent to all of mankind. They have to believe in the Shahadatain, as well as some other general traits of Allah Ta'ala and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And as we mentioned last time, in this section, the author, the translator I should say, he inserted some commentary of his own from other books to flesh out the chapter, but we're going to skip to page 19 where the author resumes the actual text. So he mentioned what every single person has to believe, okay, in terms of Iman. Now he's going to talk about what can actually remove someone from Islam. What can actually remove someone from Islam. Now this chapter is placed here for a reason. It's not placed here for individuals to learn and start pointing fingers and calling people non-Muslim or calling people kafir or calling people this and that, right? Rather, it's placed here to protect oneself. It's placed to protect oneself. Just like, for example, okay, someone who's getting married might be taught the rulings of divorce, not because there's an expectation that they will go and divorce their wife, but rather so they can protect themselves from unintentionally falling into divorce, for example. And in this case, the chapter is teaching us how to protect ourselves from falling into disbelief. How to protect ourselves from falling into disbelief. So, we are learning what's coming here now, to protect ourselves. To protect ourselves from falling into disbelief, not to point fingers at other people and call them non-Muslim. So he says, what removes a person from Islam? Every Muslim is required to safeguard his Islam and protect it from what spoils it, invalidates it, and interrupts it, which is apostasy, i.e. disbelief after Islam. May Allah Most High protect us. In this time, there is such tremendous leniency in speech that words were uttered by people that removed them from Islam without them even seeing this as sinful, let alone it being disbelief. There are three categories of disbelief: actions, beliefs. There are three categories of disbelief: beliefs, actions, and statements. Each category has numerous subcategories. So, this chapter is very important. The first thing he says, he's telling us that it is obligatory upon every Muslim to protect their Islam. So every single Muslim must nurture their Islam, protect it, and let it grow. Okay? Just like how, for example, every single Muslim is obligated, right, to protect their family, their children, from that which can corrupt them, to teach their children their religion. You're obligated to protect your own Islam, to not expose yourself to things that can spoil your Islam or invalidate it, right, or corrupt it. That's an obligation on every single believer. Okay? Tamam. And he's telling us as well that disbelief after being Muslim is something called apostasy. In Arabic, it's called ridda. It's called ridda. May Allah protect us all from it, inshallah. Then he says that, and this is really important, that in his time, the time that he wrote the book, okay? This is a long time ago. This isn't even right now. That in his time, people were so lenient in speech, okay, that they would say things that would be considered disbelief. And they wouldn't even know that. So this is his era that he's talking about. So what about our era now, where people are far more removed from knowledge, far more ignorant, and far more careless in what they say and what they type, okay, and what they write. So, what this tells us now is that what we say and what we do, tamam, not only has implications in terms of reward and sin, it actually has implications in our affairs, okay, and even our relationship with Allah Ta'ala. So we all know, for example, that certain things that we say and do can be means of reward and means for sin, right? You can give someone, right, say a nice word to them, give them salams, for example, and you're rewarded. You can backbite and you are sinful, okay? You can, for example, pick something that is, harmful from the path, like a thorn or a piece of glass or something, and you're rewarded. You can do something with your hand, an action that can cause you to be sinful, like hitting someone, okay? Hitting someone without right, okay? So our actions and our words are not only means of reward and sin, they actually have influence over our life in this world by, firstly, for example, being a way one can enter or exit Islam. So you can enter Islam by shahadatain. You can end up leaving Islam because of something you said, because of something you did, because of something you believed, because a belief is an action of the heart, okay? You can, for example, get married, okay? Two strangers, no relationship whatsoever. It's haram for them to look at each other. But because of one phrase, tamam, between the man and the woman's wali, suddenly they're husband and wife. They can procreate, they can look at each other, they live together, he has to support her, she has to be there for him, right? One phrase changed all that. Similarly, he says another phrase and divorces her, right? And all that goes away, okay? Someone, for example, wants to take ownership over something, right? I'm going to sell you this book, okay? One phrase that I sold you this book and your phrase that you accept it, khalas, ownership is transferred now. And so you see that our actions, our statements, right, they're very important. So you have to be very careful what you say and what you do, because the implications aren't just reward and sin. The implications are far greater than that, okay? Because reward and sin, someone can be heedless of it, and while it's important to be cognizant of what you're saying in terms of reward and sin, so you don't wake up in the next life with a scroll full of bad deeds, okay? It's important, right? But more importantly, if you say or do something in this life that is sinful, but also has repercussions on not just yourself, but your family, your loved ones, and other things, right? You should definitely be wary of that and you should stay away from it, okay? So our actions, our statements, our beliefs have a lot of implications and are really important to be cognizant of what we're saying, what we're doing, and what we believe. So he's saying there are certain things you can do, certain things you can say, certain things you can believe that can actually strip you of your iman, make you leave the fold of Islam. So what are they? He says, apostasy via the heart. So the first category he's going to go into are the category of beliefs that take someone out of Islam. Now beliefs are what? They're actions of the heart. A belief is an action of the heart, okay? So that's why he says apostasy via the heart. Now these are things that your heart can do that takes you out of Islam. He says, the first, i.e. the beliefs that result in disbelief, include doubt in Allah, His Messenger, the Quran, the final day, paradise, fire, reward, punishment, and similar things that are matters of consensus, which are necessarily known as part of the religion and not typically hidden to common people like him, literally are not hidden to him. So what he says here is that being doubtful of Allah Ta'ala, His existence, Him being a creator, okay? What does doubtful here mean? It means you are not 100% steadfast sure, okay? Now belief in something means you are 100% certain of it, okay? When you say, for example, amantu billah, I believe in Allah, that means you believe in Him, right? Just like how, for example, I can say, I believe so-and-so is sitting in front of me. I have no doubt in that because he is literally in front of me, okay? Right now you can say, for example, it's nighttime. You believe that it's night and you are 100% sure. There's no 99% or 98%. No, 100%, okay? There's no, I'm pretty sure there's a creator. No, there is a creator. So doubtfulness means anything less than 100% in this case. Okay? So anyone who doesn't have 100% faith or 100% belief in Allah Ta'ala, okay, that removes them from Islam. Okay? Similarly, 100% faith in what else? In his prophets. Tamam. In the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And the Quran, and the last day, and the existence of paradise, the existence of the fire, reward and punishment that Allah has promised for believers and disbelievers in the next life. Tamam. And anything like that, that is a matter of consensus of the scholars, and is also something that is widely known and necessarily known of the religion. So let's break this down, okay? So, in Islam, there are certain things that the scholars have consensus of, okay? Meaning all the scholars have consensus that this is part of their religion. For example, right? Praying 5 times a day. Okay? Good luck finding a scholar that tells you you don't have to do that. All right? Or that, for example, stealing is haram. Okay? Or that Allah exists. Or that the Prophet ﷺ was the final prophet, the messenger of God. Or that there is something as reward and punishment, that Allah will reward those who perform good deeds and punish those that perform bad deeds. Okay? So these are matters of consensus, right? Every single scholar agrees on it. Now there are matters that they're not matters of consensus, meaning scholars have differed upon them. Like what? Like where you put your hands when you pray. Okay? Do you put them like this? Do you put them like this? Where you hold them exactly? Okay? Matter of difference of opinion. Okay? So we have things that scholars have agreed upon. It's a matter of consensus. And then there are things that scholars have differed upon. Okay? Within the realm of things that scholars have agreed upon, there are 2 categories. There are things that everyone knows. Everyone knows. Things that the scholar, the layman, right? Everyone knows. You don't have to take a class to know it. You don't have to do research to know it. You don't have to Google the answer to know it. You don't have to, ask your friend. You just know it. Why? By virtue of just being with the Muslims, you know it. Even if you're not Muslim, you probably know it, right? Like what? Like Muslims don't eat pork, okay? Doesn't matter, right? If you're Muslim or not Muslim, if you live with Muslims, you know what? Muslims don't eat pork. Muslims don't perform adultery. Muslims don't sin or steal. Muslims don't, for example, Muslims have to pray. Muslims have to fast in Ramadan. These are things that are matters of consensus, and everyone knows them, okay? Everyone knows them. With the exception of some people. Someone who became Muslim very recently, for example, is excused. They might not know this stuff. Or someone, for example, that grew up very distant from Muslims. They might be Muslim, but they grew up really far from Muslims and scholars, right? They might not know these things. They're excused as well, okay? Then you have matters of consensus that not everyone's going to know. Like, for example, there are certain matters in inheritance law that are matters of consensus. Okay, how much, for example, someone's daughter might inherit from them. Okay, a matter of consensus. But not everyone's going to know that, okay? Not everyone's going to know that. So, what he's talking about now, when he says in the verse, he says in the sentence, he says, doubt in Allah, His Messenger, the Quran, the final day, paradise, fire, reward, punishment, and similar things that are matters of consensus, okay? Which are necessarily known as part of their religion and not typically hidden to common people. So he's talking about this category, okay? It's a matter of consensus. Everyone knows about it, okay? And he listed some examples in terms of theology, right? Allah Ta'ala, His existence is agreed upon by all scholars. And everyone knows it, right? The Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the scholars agree upon Him. And everyone knows about Him. The Quran as well. The final day. Heaven, hell, reward, punishment. Things like this, okay? Disbelief in these things can remove someone from the state, from Islam, okay? Now, there is a difference between doubt versus what's called the waswasa or misgivings, okay? What's the difference, right? Doubt is uncertainty, okay? Uncertainty, all right? What's uncertainty, all right? Like, for example, right? let's look at a practical example. Okay, let's look at a practical example, right? All right, someone leaves their house, okay, to come to Al-Maqasid here to pray Isha. All right, they left their house and they're asking themselves, did I lock the door or not? Okay, they have doubt now whether they locked the door. They're not sure. Okay, same person, right? They locked the door. They went to their car, and they're like, did I lock the door or not? Like, no, I for sure locked the door. But wait, why am I thinking I'm not? The door is not locked. This is waswasa. This is a misgiving. This is shaitan inserting an idea into your head, okay, that you just have to turn away from. So some people might be afflicted with thoughts from shaitan, okay, about, the lack of existence of Allah Ta'ala, or the lack of the truth of the Prophet's message, right? But it's just that, it's misgivings. He's just coming and just inserting something in your mind, almost like an attack. And it's not true, right? This type of thing doesn't exclude you, doesn't take you out of Islam, okay? Why? Because it's not actual uncertainty. It's not you actually believing. It's not a person actually believing that a person not being uncertain. It's not a person being uncertain in these things. Rather, it's just a shaitan attacking their mind, inserting thoughts, right? That can be pushed out. They come out of nowhere, and you can push them away, and they're gone, right? As opposed to someone reaching a conclusion, right? Or beginning to actually doubt things. So that's number one. Having doubt in Allah Ta'ala and the rest of those things that he listed. Then he says, number two, someone believing the absence, i.e. negation of a single of Allah's attributes that is according to consensus, necessary, and which is proven through a reason like knowledge. So, not believing in one of Allah's attributes that is agreed upon by scholars, okay, and the intellect points you toward, okay, is also a form of disbelief. And the details of that, what those specific attributes are something that's covered in classes of theology and aqidah, like the class that Shaykh Yahya is covering. Okay? For example, like a really good example is negating the fact that Allah is one. Negating the fact that Allah Ta'ala is alive. Negating the fact that Allah Ta'ala is pre-eternal. He always was and He always will be. Nothing created Him. These type of attributes and the like are usually more discussed in class of theology, like the Aqidah class that happens before this. Then he says, ascribing to Him, Most High is He, an attribute that according to consensus is necessary for Him to be free of, and which is proven through a reason, like corporeality. Tamam? So he's saying, what another form of disbelief is to ascribe an attribute to Allah Ta'ala that is agreed upon, that He's not part, that the scholars have agreed He doesn't have, and that the intellect tells you He doesn't have either. A good example is that He resembles His creation. If someone believes that Allah Ta'ala resembles His creation in form, the fact that He has a body, or that He's in space-time, all these types of things, this is something, right, that can lead someone to disbelief. Okay? Number 4, declaring as lawful that which is unlawful according to consensus and is necessarily known as part of the religion and is not typically hidden to common people. Like fornication, tamam, anal sex, killing, stealing, taking by force, i.e. forcibly taking property from people without right. So, another thing, tamam, that also can lead someone to a state of disbelief is making what's impermissible or declaring what's impermissible to be permissible. Okay? Declaring what is impermissible to be permissible. This impermissible thing has to be what? Agreed upon by all scholars to be impermissible, tamam, and is well known from the religion that is impermissible. Someone, for example, comes and says that eating pork is permissible. Everyone knows Muslims don't eat pork. Okay? Someone comes and says, okay, fornication is permissible. Everyone knows Muslims don't fornicate. Okay? All the scholars have agreed. All the Muslims know, whether they are practicing or not practicing. Right? Whether they've studied or not studied, they all know that this is haram, right? But this person comes and says, no, it's permissible. Okay? For example, killing, stealing, okay? All these things, if they declare it to be permissible, it all takes them out of the fold of Islam. Now, one thing to note here is that this declaration that something is lawful, okay, after it is unlawful, after knowing that it's unlawful, it only applies to someone after they have learned the ruling, okay, after they have learned the ruling. So, for example, right, we have someone, okay, that's never studied. For whatever reason, like they were raised far from scholars and Muslims, or they recently became Muslim, right? This person comes and says that, oh, you can eat pork as a Muslim, okay? Now, if they've never been taught the ruling, then their declaration of this is not a form of disbelief, okay? Their declaration of this is not a form of disbelief. But after they've been taught the ruling, okay, if they still declare this, then it's a form of disbelief, okay? It's a form of disbelief, all right? So after they've been taught and they've understood, if they still are, adamant, okay, then you say that action is a form of disbelief, okay? But if they're just ignorant, okay, they just don't know, all right, okay, then what they're saying is not disbelief. They're sinful for not having studied, for not having learned their religion, okay? And there might be other sins associated with the action, but it is not disbelief, okay? It is not disbelief. He says, declaring as unlawful that which is lawful in a similar manner, i.e. something that is necessarily known as part of the religion and is not typically hidden to common people, like trade and marriage. So someone declares something that is permissible as impermissible. Something that all the scholars have agreed upon is permissible. Something that is also like everyone knows is permissible. Okay, someone comes and says that you can't buy and sell things in Islam. It's haram. Someone comes and says that getting married is haram in Islam. Okay, when everyone, all the scholars and all the laymen and scholars, everyone just knows that this thing's permissible. This person says that no, it's impermissible. Right? Again, if their declaration comes after having learned the ruling, okay, then it is considered to be an action that takes you out of the fold of Islam. But if it's from their own ignorance, it's not disbelief, but they are sinful for not having learned their religion. Okay, not having learned their religion. Okay. I want to take a moment to clarify something for number 3, right? And really all these. Okay. Oftentimes people, right, they might say certain things, whether it's declarations that something that it's permissible is impermissible, or declaring that something is impermissible is permissible, right? Or they ascribe certain attributes to Allah Ta'ala that are unbecoming of Him, right? Oftentimes people who say these things, they don't really know what they're talking about, okay? They don't really know what they're talking about. They're just parroting what they've heard. They're just taking things they've heard from people and just saying it. But they haven't really understood what they're saying. They don't really maybe even believe in it once you sit down, have them think about it and break it down, okay? So for that reason, right, again, we're not learning this section to point fingers at people and call them non-believers, okay? It's not from the etiquette of the people of Ahl Sunnah Jama'ah. It's not from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to point fingers at someone and call them non-Muslims. Someone comes and prays to the Qibla, the same Qibla we pray to, they're Muslim. They say the Shahada, they're Muslim, okay? So we don't point fingers to people and call them non-believers, all right? Anyone who comes with these sort of ideas, things that we listed, right? Give them benefit of the doubt. They don't know what they're talking about. They haven't studied. They haven't really reflected upon what they're saying. They're just parroting things, right? They're just mimicking or expressing ideas they've heard somewhere online maybe or with someone else, right? They don't know what they're talking about. Give them the benefit of the doubt, okay? And the fact they pray with us, pray to the same Qibla, say the same Shahada, they're all Muslim, inshallah. They're all Muslim, inshallah ta'ala. But specific actions, okay, we can tell people, look, this is disbelief, don't do it, right? So we can tell people, for example, look, believing in this, right? Believing, for example, that, that drinking alcohol is permissible is a form of disbelief, okay? But someone comes and tells us that, it's not our job to point fingers at people and call them non-believers, okay? Who knows? Maybe the instant between them declaring this thing, right? After they declared it, they might have made tawbah with themselves on Allah Ta'ala, read on their shahada, and then join us for prayer. You never know. Okay? So it's important to note that this section is a section that we're learning to protect ourselves and not to accuse people, right? And push people out of Islam. Are there any questions? Yes.
So, this subject that you're speaking on now, can you expound a little bit? Like in our time, as a good example, you have this group called the Quran Yun.
Yeah.
Heard of them? So
Yeah.
that, for example, like, to what level is it the layman's responsibility, the average Muslim like myself responsibility to protect, my brother in the community who might not have any idea about that, so they basically say we discard the entire Al-Habib collection, all of it,
Yeah.
any of it, which, so that's my question.
So the brother asked, he said, what's our responsibility as lay people when it comes to warning our brothers in the community or sisters in the community about sects that might have beliefs that are contradictory to what Ahlul Sunnah and Jama'ah believe? In essence, it's your question.
Well, not necessarily warning them about the sect itself, but if someone were to come in with that, for example, so it becomes a threat, not like a hypothetical.
So you're saying,
concern yourself, but say one of them came in here.
yeah, okay, gotcha.
And started saying,
So someone who's part of one of these sects that are deviant comes,
right.
How should you approach them, right? What's your responsibility, right? So again, it's not our job to call people not Muslim, right? People pray to the same qibla we pray to. People say the same shahadatain that we say. They're Muslim, okay? Now, they might believe things we don't agree with, right? In which case, we just call them to Allah, all right? We just call them to Allah Ta'ala, right? We try to help them come to understand, right? They're wrong, they're like the incorrectness of their beliefs. Now, this isn't going to happen through debate. It's not going to happen through argumentation, because most people, okay, that's not how you convince them. Okay, most people, they're just not built like that. We're just having an intellectual bout with them will lead them to change their mind, because he's coming into it ready to convince you, right? And you're trying to convince him. So what's going to happen? Everyone's going to dig in deeper into their position. But calling them to Allah Ta'ala through the same methods that we would use, for example, people who are not Muslim, right? Showing them good character, telling them more of the Prophet ﷺ, making them love the Prophet ﷺ more, right? Softening their heart, making dua for them, all that goes a long way in helping them eventually come to a correct belief into the correct path. Okay? Yeah.
With that said, can you pray behind them?
So the brother asked, with that said, if some people from those deviant beliefs come and, pray, or the imam, for example, can you pray behind them? It depends exactly what they believe, right? But for the most part, if they believe something that removes them from Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, right? Then it's better to avoid praying behind them. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Yes. It's not working? Is their mic working? The lady's mic? It's not on. There you go.
There it goes. Assalamu alaikum. Oh my God, that's loud. My question was for discuss like declaring. Is someone's action, if they don't use their words, similar to like declaring? Like if someone is doing something that is unlawful, so the people around them see that and just assume that it is lawful. Is that the same as them like stating it by word, but instead they're doing it by action? So like someone sees a Muslim eating pork, or they see them drinking and they're like, okay, so this must be okay because I see it? Or do they have to actually outwardly like state it? And then second to that,
how do we respond to the people who, for example, basically announce that similarly to how the Christians do, like, God is all love, so everything is forgiven, so it does not matter what you do, you'll be forgiven. It's okay. Basically, kind of offering allowances for doing as you please with the automatic assumption that you'll be forgiven.
Yeah, so she's asking, what exactly does the author mean by declaring, right? He means here believing in your heart. So believing that something that is lawful, that is known to, believing that something that is impermissible is permissible. So someone believes in their heart that eating pork is halal, for example. They believe in their heart that performing fornication is halal, for example. That's what he's talking about. Okay? That's what he's talking about. Someone, if they don't believe it in their heart, right, they just don't care and they do it anywhere, that's not disbelief. Right? That's not what he's talking about. Okay? He's talking about someone actually holds a belief in their heart that these things that are haram are actually lawful to do. Lawful to do. Okay? Your second question about people who hold the opinion that, like you said, God is all love and He'll forgive everything. Don't worry about it. Live your life. Well, Allah is merciful. That is without a doubt. Okay? That is without a doubt. And He is Arhamar Rahimin. He's the most merciful. Okay? But there's also enough in the Quran and the Hadith to tell us that He's also testing us in this life. Okay? He's also testing us in this life. If He didn't, if there was no test, why would He have sent a prophet? Why would He have sent a prophet to tell us how to live our lives? What is permissible, what is impermissible? Okay? So all this message of the Prophet ﷺ reaching us, which includes all these legal rulings, it includes all these responsibilities, right? It's a testament to the fact that Allah is testing us and He wants us to act in a way that is pleasing to Him. Okay? That's why in the Quran, He promises punishment to those who go against it. And He promises a reward to those who go in line with it and perform it. Okay? Now, and there's a difference between someone performing what is pleasing to Allah Ta'ala versus someone performing what is not pleasing to Allah Ta'ala, and He forgives them of His own accord. Okay? Allah's forgiveness is not guaranteed. Even though He is most merciful, His forgiveness is not guaranteed. Alright? But what is guaranteed is what He's told us. That people who transgress will be punished, and people who perform well will be rewarded. Okay? It's no different than someone's relationship with their parents, right? Your parents can be the nicest people in the world, but if you don't do what they say, there's no guarantee that they're going to be happy. Okay? Any other questions? Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. So I know a sister that there was a time where she didn't have an understanding of the religion and then gained knowledge, and now they understand about the attributes of Allah and the foundations. So, but whenever they think about Allah, their mind kind of goes to a space, if that makes sense, because they're a very visual learner. And they just think about things in a very visual way. So even though they understand that Allah doesn't have a place and doesn't resemble creation, their mind still goes to that space. And maybe that's like a sacred space, or I'm really not sure. I don't really understand it. But is that an issue? Is that something that they need to work on through dhikr? It's just like, they understand it in their heart that Allah doesn't resemble creation, but their mind still goes to that space when they're thinking about Allah.
So I would say for that person, they're definitely Muslim, right? They believe the right things, and then just, remind themselves of how Allah doesn't resemble creation in any way, shape, or form whenever these kind of thoughts come up, right? For some people, just by virtue of where we live, here in the U.S., right? Oftentimes we're bombarded with images that are created to represent God, whether it's in cartoons as a young child, or movies, or shows, or like advertisements and things like that, right? So it just subconsciously get eaten up by an individual. Right? But as long as you believe the right things, and you try your best to remove these thoughts, inshallah you'll be okay. Yeah. Any last questions before we close? All right, so we'll end with the Fatiha. Gives us tawfiq to seek beneficial knowledge, and then gives us tawfiq to act upon and accept those actions from us. He gives us tawfiq to spread it all over the world, makes us the apple of the Prophet ﷺ. Words our teachers, our shuyukh, our loved ones, and our parents. Wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah.